Hello, welcome to nature. I am Talking Man. I will talk at you. When I hit the start button on my PS2 controller to log out of Final Fantasy XI, something inside of me twitched. A bitter feeling of dejection and defeat slowly pulled me down, as if into the river in the boyata tree, which Valesti was currently kneeling within. It was like a friend getting on a plane, the kind of friend you don't ever see again. That's how it felt watching the timer tick down from 30 seconds. For a moment I considered moving to cancel it. Maybe this will all pass. No, that's the point, isn't it? It's already passed. It's over. After all I had accomplished and all the people I'd met on this game, here I was now, logging out for the last time, and I already knew it. What did it all mean? I wondered that while I hard shut off the console, flicking the switch off, not even logging out of Play Online. I was done with Final Fantasy XI, and people especially. My God, was I ever just completely done with people, man. So I ventured to find another online game to fill the void, something where I didn't have to cooperate with other people. Dragon Nest was a fun 4-year-long diversion, although I only did big group PvP. The combos you could pull off in that game were incredible, and it enamored me after a decade of playing Final Fantasy XI, of all things. But everyone who played big group PvP eventually left to go over to the C version of the game. You know, the version that wasn't 3 years behind in updates. Nexon America. Like, seriously, Nexon NA was really poorly managed back then. Their North American GMs, I was spectating a PvP tournament one time in which 2 GMs were participants in it, and they were using the //GM commands to give themselves full HP and full MP in the middle of the fights, so they could not actually lose. Everyone was pissed off about it, taking screenshots and video and posting them on the forums, and then they got banned for libel against the GMs. That was Dragon Nest North America at the time. It wasn't that fun unless you just kept your head down and never talked about anything ever. The GMs would seriously go out of their way to harass players and cause problems. Literally the opposite of what a GM is supposed to do. It was shocking. It was shocking, dude. It was like watching a Yakuza like run for office in Japan or something. Like, it was just like, what the effing F? Craziness. But anyway, I don't blame people for wanting to leave the North American version, because seriously, it was handled so poorly. But honestly, the biggest piss-off to me was something that did not impact the game in any way. It was when they, for some reason, disabled the use of skills in town. Skills were now only able to be used in hub zones and in dungeon runs themselves. So mystics and sorcerers and all that, they couldn't teleport around town anymore. Warriors couldn't even so much as dash around town anymore. They made it so that you had to start buying their stupid new mounts that they added if you wanted to get around town quickly, instead of just using the skills on your job that are inherent to them that you can use on every other version of the game. No, they made it so you can't use skills to move around quickly in town just to make you spend money on NX to buy mounts. What an awful company it was back then. I am so glad that they were not put in charge of Final Fantasy XI Mobile, and that never happened, because I don't like Nexon NA very much. Anyway, at some point there was only 5 or 6 of us left from what was initially about 50 or 60 men and women. One of them told me that they were thinking of checking out TERA. It seemed pretty cool. I decided I'd check it out, thinking, play for a few weeks, see what the deal is, because I'll always just come back to Dragon Nest, right? Just like I'll always play Final Fantasy XI. No. Everything's transient. And rather than trying to immortalize an experience, I was beginning to understand the truth of an old adage that the destination is irrelevant. Your journey is the story. Did I twist that adage into my own words? Yeah. I'm the master of my own words. I can do what I want. I went into TERA not caring about anything. I didn't know anybody. I wasn't sure how long I'd really play it, and so like I did with Dragon Quest VIII, when I bought that for the Final Fantasy XII demo, I didn't care what I named myself. In Dragon Quest VIII, it was Dude Guy, with 2 Y's at the end, a single word. And so for TERA, I decided upon the female dragon people for a race because the males looked gay as hell to me. Not, like, bad, just not my thing. They were well designed, I just wasn't feeling it. Especially when the dragon chicks had this dope, sick, nasty ponytail that was like 8 feet long and braided with metal wires and bands, like an 80s British psycho-punk rocker's hair. That solidified it for me, and so I named my character, unconcerned and ill-informed as I was, Girl Lady, with 2 Y's, and just said it was good. I selected my server, the roleplay server, because I figured the RP server is probably going to be, you know, a place where people aren't so much into endgame as they are into their character stories. So maybe I won't run into so much drama over here as I did to other places when I was playing other games. And I began to think about something a famous author said some time ago, and maybe it was Anne Rice? I really don't know. It was some vampire hoebag whose work I detest, and yet I can be objective as regards her personal words in an interview when she said, "Women can write believable female and male characters. Men can only write believable male characters." The interviewer asks, "Why is that?" And she says, "Because women are naturally secretive about many things. Meanwhile, men will talk about everything their dick has done for the last 20 years, no matter who's in the room." I realized she was right. I didn't genuinely understand what women go through on a daily basis throughout their lives. I had, in fact, never even played a female character in an online game up to this point, except for Phantasy Star Online. Phone-a-whirl for life, by the way. I mean, I was a raw cast, because traps are OP. But, whenever it was time or necessary to bring a force, Phone-a-whirl all day, baby. But I only played that with people who knew me. So this was a place where I was free. Free to experience what women endure on the internet. It seemed more intriguing now, until I learned very quickly, even on this server, on the starter island, that I had not joined an RP server. I joined an ERP server as a female character named Girl Lady. I had already ended my life, basically, and didn't even know. Thankfully, I met a few cool cats on that starter island and into the beginning zones. Some folks who genuinely thought I was a girl. It's kind of weird. And I was surprised to see how many people were actually gentlemen. You know, just like, kind of blew my mind. I mean, it helps that I played my part fairly well, I guess, but I wasn't interested in some kind of self-affirmation for gender dysphoria, as is often the case with precisely with what I was doing. But no, I just wanted to know what women go through as far as social interactions, and boy, did I learn a fair bit. For so long, I always wondered why there always seems to be more women who say men are the worst than men who say all women are the devil. Sure, I've heard both sides of those stories. Well, you would think there would be an equal amount of claims, but it really always seems like women clamor more about men being pigs than the other way around. Well, try playing as and pretending to be a chick in an online MMO RPG. You'll never argue against these scorned women again, because they're right. We are mostly pigs. Mostly, but not all. Enough to warrant the rage, though, for certain. After 50 levels, far longer than I'd intended to play, I had just had enough. I couldn't handle the "wanna go ERP in this zone" PMs anymore. So I made an alt. A Slayer. A cute as a button, gender-bent version of Cloud Strife named Cloud.Buster that I just absolutely adored. The way their giant swords expanded in size when engaging in combat was just freaking hilarious. Like, this tiny little 80-pound fox girl is gonna wield a 45-pound sword like that? Give me a break. Like, seriously? But that's exactly what Cloud did, so I loved the absurdity of it. And I have to say, I love Slayer. I love Slayer in TERA more than I love Thief in Final Fantasy XI. I am aware that that's like blasphemy, because I love Thief in Final Fantasy XI. But as far as rogue-style, backstabby crit classes go, Slayer still has my heart. It was just so incredible, man. Just imagine playing Thief with a greatsword. It is as cool as it sounds, but I'll barf more about that later. My cute little Slayer was a breath of fresh air. See, the lore for the North American version of TERA had the Ellens be basically miniaturized versions of the Titans from Attack on Titan. The stomach doesn't go anywhere. There are no other holes, if you know what I mean. I figured that would afford me an affable defense against the ERP messages, and guess what? It did not. Although I only ever got 3 messages. That was 3 blacklists too many, quite frankly. My character looks like they are 10 years old. The hell's wrong with you? Anyway, got my Slayer to 60 and started doing my dailies. It was fun, smacking everything to the ground with a massive sword and leaping onto their prone bodies like a rabies-infested packhound gnawing at the neck flesh, ripping and tearing, howling as the hot blood geysers erupt out from your blade. It was good, dude. It was satisfying on a visceral level, like eating barbecue ribs and using your teeth to rend flesh off the bones. Yeah, it felt like that. Playing Slayer was as good as eating barbecue ribs. But nobody else loved Slayer quite like I did, at least not yet. This game didn't have a wiki. Nobody knew anything about, well, anything really. Most builds were irrelevant until max level, and even then you just stacked crit on everything. Glyph setups were about the only thing people really discussed as far as meta elements, and it wasn't hard to parse the optimal glyph combinations. With the white glyphs, you know, the ones you buy from an NPC that literally anyone can get. Nobody really knew about the green glyphs yet, the second tier of glyphs, but more on that later. I got my Slayer to max level, but I didn't have a guild. I resolved to strengthen my typing skills at this point, considering there wasn't really anything else for me to do. I mean, not talking online with any kind of frequency will cause that sort of thing to suffer, so I chose the best thing possible. Wizard people, dear reader. If you have heard of it before, then yeah, it's as beautiful as you know. If you have not heard of it before, stop this video, stop listening to me. If you want something to listen to while you're grinding or camping NMs, go listen to Wizard People, dear reader, right now. Screw me, bro. Seriously. Wizard People, dear reader is an audiobook spoof of the first Harry Potter movie. You heard that right. It's meant to be listened to while the movie plays and the TV is muted. The book, in quotes, falsely narrates the events on screen, such as how the HP and Ronnie the Bear are late for potion making classes again, because they began their morning with yet another round of Valium and tequila sunrises. Seriously, the whole book is like this. I especially love Professor McGonagall becoming Professor Hardcastle McCormick, and her voice being described as a piano made of frozen Windex. But I wouldn't just transcribe this, as I'm sure you would guess, because this is me. No, I would do it in the global chat channel, for everyone to see. And to my surprise, I started sort of a gang war. Some people hated me, enough to send me death threats about IP trace routes and address acquisitions to firebomb my house for real. But then I had another camp of people that just loved me, defending me, saying that I was providing entertainment while they kill monotonous quests of, oh, kill 10 blah blahs and get 15 butts and turn these into this idiot. I mean, that's all any quest in an MMO is, really. So these people loved me to death. Maybe sort of a proto-alpha version of this channel? I don't know. Many of you have told me that I'm one of your choices for grinding or farming or camping NMs, and that you like to listen to me in the background to pass the time. That's pretty much what I was doing for these people in real time on TERA in the global chat. And just speaking of TERA, I just want to mention, TERA's version of Notorious Monsters was something called BAMs, B-A-M. It literally meant big-ass monsters, which is pretty great. I loved level grinding on BAMs, honestly. Any class could level grind on them. Like, if you were really paying attention and you were at the top of your game, they were actually a challenge of your skill, no matter what level you were, and that's why I loved fighting them. I didn't want to get rusty on my job, and they were a good way to fight something serious solo whenever you kind of felt like it. It was honestly about the same EXP per hour as just mass killing minion groups, but it was way cooler. These gigantic savage monsters that you could just fight on your way while leveling up. That's awesome. They really genuinely tested your skills and understanding of the game mechanics across multiple jobs, and that's why I loved fighting them across my alts. And really, I guess that's kind of what spurred me on. I wanted to amuse and entertain other people. A small aside, Sylvando from Dragon Quest XI is one of my favorite characters in literally anything. While everyone else is obsessed and preoccupied with how to defeat the big bad, Sylvando wants to help people smile and be entertained just for a short while. Enough time for their hearts to rest from the dire hardships of life. To me, that's another kind of hero. And I've always kind of wanted to be like him ever since I really saw him. Maybe I can't fight wars or change elections or free a city-state from a tyrant, but can I entertain someone for at least a little while? That's good enough for me. After all, I mean, that's hard enough to do these days. One of the only things in that game that wasn't a fantastical work of fiction was the notion that a hero can be someone who just entertains people and puts a smile on their face. That meant a lot to me. Eventually, in TERA, I started doing endgame activities. They popped up on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, as I recall, the alien invasions. Also, can I just say how much I loved the gradation of like raw fantasy to sci-fi as you like progressed across the zones? Like, you start the game in, freaking mega fantasy land, but by the time you get to the end, it's like being on a sci-fi spaceship. It's like playing Halo or something. It's crazy how it just gets to that point, and it doesn't feel out of place. It's so good. Like, seriously. And that one lake, seriously, if you played TERA, you remember that lake, right? The one that you have to swim across with that catastrophically large fish that swims under it. You can't dive in TERA. You can only swim on the surface of water. But I was terrified of that. One of the only phobias I still have that I haven't been able to conquer and get rid of is that I am terrified of swimming in large, deep bodies of water where I cannot see the bottom. And in the case of TERA, as I'm swimming across this, like, half-mile deep, crystal clear spring, right? And then this eel, catfish, this swimming beneath you. Like, I have honestly never been more scared in my life. I'm not even playing. Just holding W to go across that lake. And for some reason, I had to look down. I don't know why. I could have just looked forward and not even have seen the thing that terrifies me so much. But like a car accident on the highway, something forces you to look. And so I looked down, and it just happened to be one of the moments where that thing came out of its hole and swam across the lake and went into its other cavern. I'm not playing. I was so scared, I almost puked on my keyboard. The only other time I have actually been that scared is playing Silent Hill 2 for the first time. That game freaked me out. Like, seriously. But no, like, for real, I've jumped out of an airplane at 64,000 feet, and that was scary. But swimming across that lake in TERA is terrifying to me. I just want you to know that little bit about me, okay? Anyway, I started doing the alien invasion on Slayer, but it was bad faction point gains. I thought it would be better to do it on Lancer because I could attack more enemies at a time and get more points, and thankfully, leveling from 50 to 60 on my Lancer, I seem to have dodged a lot of people who were in the ERP crowd by that point. Most of it, but not all of it. I was still asked on occasion if I wanted some D. I blacklisted them and said nothing. But I got to 60, I geared up, I hit the invasions, and boy, that was a step up. I was getting like 600 credits on my Slayer from doing these invasions solo. I was getting 1,200 on my Lancer. I was getting double points, baby. I was pretty hype about that, except for one day when something happened that changed everything. Not only the way I played TERA, but how I viewed life. All from a single accident. See, TERA is actually really cool. The spacebar is a temporary hotkey for skill chains. Use a starter skill in a chain and then spam the spacebar. It's simple enough for most things. Although it is more effective to time everything manually, sometimes you just want to smash the spacebar and not care. So the spacebar was also a temporary, hotkey for your skills, but it was also a confirm and accept key at all times. And so as I'm just mashing away on combos, I unknowingly accepted an alliance invite. It was on screen for like a tenth of a second. I didn't even know what the window was, but before I really comprehended what was happening, there was a flurry of messages in the chat window. Mel, you stupid ass. Mel, what the hell? Mel, what did you do this time? What the F? Someone named Einalem messaged me, and as I'm tanking about 27 mobs at the same time, asking me to give them Alliance Leader back, and I'm just like, I don't know how. Thankfully, I could type pretty fast, especially from typing out that Harry Potter story, that I was able to type that out between, big actions that I had to block and guard against. So she explains that I hand Alliance Leader back to her, and she tells me that she's grateful I just wasn't another troll. And I tell her, oh, I love trolling, actually. I think it's hilarious, but dissolving an alliance isn't trolling. That's harassment. Trolling should be harmless and funny. If someone's actually upset, even just because they took it wrong, then it's not funny. That's bullying. That's being cruel, and cruelty isn't funny. She seemed amused by that in some facet and told me to stay in the alliance, that their priests and mystics were going to teleport us to each node. Both healer classes in the game had a 10-minute cooldown teleport spell. Anybody in the alliance, when it was cast, would be teleported when given a prompt, and then they're teleported to the caster's exact position. It was a really neat spell. So I tagged along, tanking like a feverish madman with an entire stack of Pringles chips on my shoulder. The alliance enjoyed this. I enjoyed being important for my tanking skills, quite frankly. Then the last node pops up, an instance for a fight that I hate. They tell me just to tank the one on the right and I'll be fine. That part is. The priest assigned me keeps me capped off like a beer at a bachelor party. And then we fight the dragon. The worst dragon. Its knockdown stat is 99 billion, for real. If it blinks at you and you're just on the ground immediately. It negated my entire choice of a dragon lady as a character race and class. My 45-minute cooldown of null most knockdowns meant absolutely nothing. And the buff, it wears off after being floored one time. 45-minute cooldown. How fun. They ask me if I want to join them. I say, I'll think about it, maybe. Then I go turn in my faction points for the invasion, and I get like 12,000 points. Got 10 times more than I can solo. Yeah, I'll join you guys. Sure, why not? And that's when I met Aaron and Melanie. Einalem was Melanie backwards, and one other only tank in the entire guild was Bear Lancer, a Popori Panda, whose real name was Aaron. And Aaron and Melanie were not just two peas in a pod. They were like a mutant Siamese dual pea that grew into each other. I mean, just being in Ventrilo with them, you could actually feel a gravitational force between them. Even though they live 250 miles apart, and like I was in California, I'm on the West Coast, and they're all the way over on the East Coast, I could physically feel a gravitational force between them from how just deep into each other they were. And it wasn't all love and roses neither. Like, they would argue with each other at times, heated, passionate, angry, like mega intense arguing, like yelling, screaming, distorted voices over a microphone type of arguing. But then they would disappear into their password-locked channel for 30 minutes to an hour, and then they'd come back out, and then it was back to every 5 minutes of, even when, like, no one is saying anything and there's just complete silence, it's just, I love you, honey. Oh, I love you too, baby. It was like playing Marco Polo with love, and I thought it was so cute, honestly. And just to point out, my wife and I do the same thing. If you don't, you should. I'm just saying. I don't care if your girl or your lady or your wife seems okay. If the fact that you tell her you love her once a year, you better be saying that every 5 minutes. No cap. Ain't no reason not to, frankly. Ain't no reason not to re-encourage each other as much as possible. In point of fact, I think that's why they were able to, within an hour of even the most intense argument, it's just like, oh, I'm sorry, baby, I love you. I don't want to be mad at you. I feel wrong being mad at you. I only want to love you, baby. That's just how they were, even at the most extreme moments of anger at each other, which was a huge contrast against my own parents. Whenever my parents had an argument, they'd be mad at each other for months on end, and they never apologize either. And frankly, that's an important thing, is that when you apologize, you need to do it in front of your damn kids. They need to see it. They're involved in the family as well. And I think that's what made Melanie and Aaron such great guild leaders, is that they did those apologies in public. They let everyone know. We were basically like their kids. It's kind of how it felt, even though I was older than them. It's just the nature of that guild, is that they were very concerned about the individual people behind the characters. It wasn't just what can you bring to the guild, it's how are you doing right now, and how much can you reasonably bring without mental problems cropping up later. I loved that about that group so much. It was actual people. It wasn't just jobs with numbers attached to them. You know what I mean? And at one point, like, Aaron couldn't stand being away from Melanie no more, and he's the one who threw out the suggestion of, I want to come live with you for 7 days and see how long, see how we get along, type of deal. And she agreed, and she talked to her mom, and she was okay with it. And the thing is that she met Aaron through her younger brother. Her younger brother was on a different Ventrilo server that played Dota and League of Legends with people. Aaron had the most anti-Semitic name on that server. It's so bad that I'm actually afraid to say it, because this video probably won't get past the scan of being uploaded to YouTube if I actually say it. It was pretty bad, but that's how I learned that they just have a dark sense of humor. Pretty much everyone in that guild had a dark sense of humor, because we had all been through our own traumas, and humor is kind of one of the universal coping mechanisms. And, well, when we've all been through the ringer a couple times, we just all have a dark sense of humor, so it's just how it was. And Melanie's living situation, it wasn't just her. She lived with her mom in an apartment with her younger brother, who I think was 22 at the time, and her son, who was 2. The dad skipped town. And her older brother, who had Down syndrome, who was 40 years old. The type of Downs that he had is a deficiency in the pineal pituitary gland, that you just don't generate your own hormones. And typically when a person's supposed to be going through puberty and they're not generating hormones, they die. I went to school with some kid in 6th grade who he didn't live past 13 years old. He had the same thing. But he was 40, Melanie's brother. But he had the mind of a 4-year-old. And the biggest contention in their family was tablet time. Who gets to use the tablet right now was always the cause of so much screaming and yelling and problems. So when Aaron shows up, and within 1 hour of him being there, he's just like, oh, your brother wants to watch these dances? I know those dances. Just let your son have the tablet. And he just starts busting grooves in front of Melanie's older brother, right there in front of him. It's not just on a screen. This is oh, I can move around and he's right in front of me and I can actually see the dance in 3D. It's not just on a screen. It was the greatest thing in the world to Melanie's older brother, and he absolutely loved it. And mom looks over, she's in the kitchen. She's looking over and is like, did you just calm down my son like that? We can't even do that. What? They go out to dinner the next day. Well, I think it was a Denny's I think they went to. And Melanie's son, at 2 years old, he loves Lego Batman. Lego Batman is his favorite video game and his favorite character. Aaron is able to throw his voice to sound literally exactly like Will Arnett and sound like Lego Batman. So now Melanie's son, instead of throwing a fit and having hissy fits waiting for the food to show up, he is now engaged in having a conversation with Lego Batman. And in his 2-year-old mind, Aaron is the voice of Lego Batman. And when he goes home to play Lego Batman, Aaron is the voice actor, because to him it's the same person. And like, I can't imagine how magical that must have been for that child to be like, oh wow, my mom's new boyfriend is Lego Batman, my hero. Like, you could not imagine how well he immediately fit into this family. And the reclusive son, who's always just playing Dota and League and talking to his friends online, Aaron is able to get him out to the dinner table and like have conversations with him about Dota and League builds and stuff like that. So Aaron, within a couple days of being there, was tightening the family, resolving conflicts, and just making everyone's life better. It was like some Disney movie crap. He was genuinely like a magical freaking prince. And the fact that he came from being one of the most vulgar 4chan posters you could possibly imagine, the fact that Melanie looked at him and was like, I see good in him and I can draw it out. 10 billion women across human history have said that. Melanie might be the only one who's ever actually succeeded. She turned Aaron into the most stalwart family man that there ever could be, especially considering that he was inserting himself into an already established family unit long after the fact. And I loved Aaron because we were the same person as far as tanking goes. Whenever it was, the tank swapping and all that, we never actually discussed it, ever. He was like Shizuki from Final Fantasy XI, my paladin brother. Everything was constant clockwork, greased up with lard and bacon fat. Just beautiful, dude. It was so smooth all the time. And it was so funny because honestly, Aaron and I were just the antithesis of each other. I was a hardcore mega Christian, and he was a hardcore mega atheist. But when it came time for playing the game, tanking, getting stuff done, we don't have no problems with each other. We get along perfectly because almost every single other one of our viewpoints in life is already identical. So why would we take this one difference between us and use that as something to have a grudge match about each other? I love Aaron. His beliefs are kind of irrelevant to that. I love him for the person he is, not what he believes. And he went back after his week was up, and he probably the only time I ever saw him weak. He was talking to me in tells because we were bros, and I knew, even though he didn't say it, I knew he was crying. He was broken, dude, of just like, I can't not be in her physical presence, dude. I feel like I am dying every 5 seconds and coming back to life and dying again. I can't do this, bro. I'm going to go insane. What do I do? And I told him, just pack your stuff up and move in right now. Just do it. Don't think about it. Don't make a big deal about it. Move in like it's normal, bro. You fit in there. Like, you may not have been born to them and with them, but bro, that's your family, dude. You found your family. You need to be living with them, dude. Just straight up. Whatever you have to do to make that happen, it's gonna be worth it, dude. And he did. After, I think, 2.5 months, they moved in with each other, and it was, as far as I'm aware, it was a happily ever after story for them. I mean, sure, they had problems. Every couple has problems. But they were able to go through them together. I mean, I genuinely, at that point in my life, I did not believe in love or friendship anymore. But because of that accidental alliance invite and the fact that I decided to just go along with them, I actually got to have friends again. Good friends that actually knew me, and we shared a lot of deep personal parts of our lives with. And from watching Aaron and Melanie, I actually believed in love again, and there was a long point in my life where I just, for real, I did not. So, like, I owe so much to the two of them. They revitalized my heart, soul, and spirit, and gave me the courage to actually believe in other people again when I did not have that ability anymore. And I want to mention this, not... What I'm about to say isn't to entertain you. What I'm about to say isn't to get views or likes or anything like that. Nothing like that. What I'm about to say, I am sharing because I feel it's worth knowing. Melanie is seriously one of the strongest women that I've ever known in my life. You may wonder why I didn't mention her dad. For a while, I wondered about her dad too, because she never talked about him. As I was taking care of my dad, bedridden with multiple sclerosis, a brain tumor, and late-onset type 2 adult diabetes, I was upset at one point because dealing with my dad is difficult. He's a stubborn Italian. He's difficult to deal with. Even my mom will tell you he is one of the most difficult men she's ever had to deal with in his life. But, she loves him all the same. But at that stage of his life when he couldn't do anything for himself anymore, he got really ornery. Like, my dad served in the Marines. He was a lumberjack and a cabinet maker. We built like 5% of the entirety of this city over the last 30 years. A lot of the mansions on the hills up here, we built those. Like, that is the type of man my dad was, and then being confined to a bed and having to ask everyone to do everything for him, it was obnoxious and irritating. I didn't mind doing it, but at the same time, it wore on me. I mean, just ask anyone. Being a full-time caretaker for someone who is a bedridden near vegetable, it is one of the hardest jobs in the world. It is so emotionally condemning to do that, especially when it's your own dad. It is honestly the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. And one day I was just broke, and I just started complaining about it, which I don't normally do. And Melanie, in Ventrilo, for everyone to hear, she shared this story. She said, "I don't think you should complain about your dad because he's just frustrated, and I think you're a good son for putting up with all that and helping him out." The reason I say this is because my dad is the worst person in the world. I actually hope and pray that I never see him again, because all it would do is bring negativity and thoughts of hate into my mind, and I just would rather never see him again. And as far as I'm concerned, him being locked away behind bars for the rest of his life is an injustice. He should be executed. I wish he wasn't alive anymore. I was shocked. Those are pretty harsh, angry words for Melanie, of all people, to be saying. She's, she might be a little rambunctious and raucous, but she's not like mean-spirited or vengeful like that. And for her to say that about her own dad, I was genuinely shocked. But I understood why when she continued. She said one day her dad just didn't come home. No calls, no nothing. He always showed up like clockwork at the same time. The family was worried about him and went to go sit in the living room waiting for Dad to come home, and 9 p.m. rolls around, he's still not home. 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and nothing. Around 11:15, there's the familiar sound of Dad's key turning the lock, opening the door and coming inside. A wave of relief washes over everyone, but it only lasts a couple seconds as Dad starts hollering incoherent vulgarities and threats at his own family. Everyone's perturbed and wondering what's going on, but at the point he turns the corner, wielding a 9mm pointed into the living room, was the point that Melanie just started running. She told me that she felt guilty, gunshots and her family behind her, and she was just running out the door. But she was pregnant at the time, and frankly, if she didn't concern herself with the child growing in her womb, then you would have something to feel guilty about. But the onus of guilt in this belongs entirely on the one who was holding the gun at his own family, trying to kill them in drunken, hate-filled rage. I've thought about that for over the, I don't know, it's been well over a decade since I heard about that. And I never complained about my dad again after she told that story. I can't even consider imagining what that would be like to have your own dad shooting a gun at you, telling you that he hates you and wants you to die. And the fact that she was able to go through that and still maintain the type of positive, go-getter, strong heart that she had. I genuinely believe she is one of the strongest women that will ever walk this earth. That kind of courage of heart, that kind of stalwart mentality, I have seen in maybe 3 people in my entire life, and she's one of them. And I just want people to know that that does exist in the world. There are strong people out there. You can be one of them too. Just don't give in. That's all it takes. It may seem simple, but I think that that's really what makes a strong person. Can you go through something that should break you and still be a good person? To me, that's a strong hero. And to me, yeah, Melanie's pretty heroic. I love her and I love Aaron. They're some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And now, I want to conclude this story, as I wrote here, on a lighter note. Is that at one point after all this, there was PvP areas that got added to TERA that had the PvP flags turned on and off on occasion. And our guild, by the time that this got implemented, it just so happened we were in the top 10 of the whole server. That was cool. And so we figured, hey, we're top 10, we could be top 5, maybe top 3. Let's get everyone's alts in here. Every time you level up, we get guild points. Every time you masterwork something, we get guild points. Every time you plus 12 your equipment, we get guild points. Come on, everybody's alt's got to be in here. Come on, we can be one of the best guilds on this server for real. Everybody's all start getting invited, and then I'm just like, there's one alt I have that you guys might not want. And they're like, why wouldn't we want it? And I tell them, okay, Mel, I'm going to get on my Slayer. And Aaron's like, you have a Slayer? Dude, I've been wanting to play another job, and I haven't figured it out. Like, what do you think of Slayer? And I'm like, I really like it, but you probably don't want my Slayer in your guild. I get on my Slayer, and I'm telling Mel over Ventrilo, like, I'm going to send you a PM on my Slayer. You don't have to invite me if you don't want this character in your guild. I will understand, no hard feelings. So I get on Cloudbuster, and I send her a tell. And I'm like, invite to Eratus, please, with a duck face. 030, the duck face, which I love. And then over Ventrilo, there is a sound that is probably what a hippopotamus giving birth and being struck by lightning would sound like. And then there's nothing. There's silence. Aaron says over Ventrilo, hang on guys, give me a second. He comes back a minute later and explains to us that Melanie fell out of her chair. The sound we heard was her headset ripping out of the back of her computer tower, which she almost launched onto the floor when she fell out of her chair, and Aaron had to catch it. She was choking and sputtering and just screaming on the floor, slightly drooling on the carpet. She gets back up and composes herself, and through her, haggard breath, she's just like, Tony, you are Cloudbuster? I'm like, yeah, that's a me. And she's just like, oh my gosh, you have no idea. When you were doing that Harry Potter thing in global chat, I was telling Aaron every time you did it, Cloudbuster is the best person and I want to be their friend one day, but I'm too shy to just, ask them to just be my friend out of the blue for no reason and no prior communication. And you're telling me that we've been friends all this time, actually? I'm like, yeah, it looks like it. And for me, that was like a very real lesson about don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't filter yourself. You don't have to put masks and facades on all the time. You'll be genuinely surprised how many people love and accept you for who you really are. I was. I mean, honestly. But there's one last thing I have to mention. The green glyphs. Oh yes, nature is winding and flapping and excitement over the thought alone. You see, there was only 2 end game activities that could earn you these tokens that allowed you to buy boxes for the green glyphs. And you couldn't just buy the glyph you wanted. You had to buy a box and you got a random glyph out of it. Out of possible 15 to 22, depending on which job you were using the box on. Now, the thing is you could trade and sell the boxes in the marketplace, but you could not trade or sell the glyph that was inside. So you could really only sell the gotchas themselves or buy the gotchas themselves. But no one ever sold them because to get one of these things required doing content that nobody freaking did. And the very few people that had any green glyphs, wink wink, I was one of them, put in the time required to solo the content, and you were meant to get like 40 to 50 of these tokens for clearing the full thing with a party, but you could solo like the first stage of it and just get a couple tokens. So I'm pulling in 4 at a time, and you need 200 per box. You're limited on how many times you can do it per week by the weekly conquest results. And yeah, it wasn't fun. But I sold it enough to get 2 glyph boxes, one for my Lancer and one for my Slayer. And this is when, around the time that I started telling Aaron, like, well, personally, I really like Slayer, but I think I would like Slayer more if I had more green glyphs. And he's like, what the hell's a green glyph? I'm like, yeah, see, that's what everyone says. No one even knows these things are in the game, dude. You have to do these stupid things, blah, 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 tell them everything I just told you. And we start doing it with a group, and, we're pulling in 30, 40 tokens at a time, actually being able to do this content that literally no one on the entire game does or knows about. And the first glyph he gets is the same glyph that I had on my Lancer for the shield swipe ability, where you 1, 2 AoE things in front of you with your shield. The glyph says increases aggro by 250%, but I never really knew what that meant. But after him and I started doing some testing in dungeons, we found out that it wasn't 250% aggro bonus on shield swipe. The calculation was actually your current aggro equals this. Multiply that by 250% each time you hit an enemy with shield swipe. So if you hit something with both parts of shield swipe, you were multiplying your aggro by 500%. It turned one of your bread and butter combo opener skills into another freaking provoke. It was so game-changingly good. That's when we realized, like, dude, all the other green glyphs are going to be like this. They're going to be paradigm shifts. They're not going to be buffs. They're going to change the job entirely. And we went gung-ho on that stuff, getting as many glyphs as we could. And Aaron and I started doing our Slayers together. After we invited some more people to guild, we had more tanks. It started out with him and me. We were the tank brothers. And then after a while, when they added the Alice in Wonderland raid to the game, like the first actual raid, we were the Slayer brothers, 2 Ellen Fox girls who looked almost exactly alike. And we had all the green glyphs for Slayer. I already loved Slayer as it is, but those green glyphs made it so much better. Overhand slash has a 30% chance to insta cooldown heart stab, and this glyph has a 50% chance to cool down overhead slash. So instead of just going through a cycle of your skills, now while you're going through your skill cycles, it's like, oh, my overhand slash recast, and that recast heart stab, guess I'm doing another 1.8 million damage freaking heart stab Oh, I can heart stab again. Here's another 1.8 million. Get on my level, you freaking idiots, saying Berserker's the best one. Berserker don't have no green glyphs, do the crap that Slayer's green glyphs do. Everyone said that my class was the worst, but then no one had any explanation for why I, as a Slayer, the inferior DPS who can't do anything right, is pulling hate off the Berserkers with little to no effort. Don't tell me a class is bad, because I'll find out how good it actually is, and I will embarrass the absolute living crap out of you. I did it on Warframe, too. Everyone said Oberon is bad, and oh boy, did I show those people wrong day after day for 5 freaking years straight, because that's what I do. I was so glad to indoctrinate Aaron into my Slayer, nonsense. And he saw firsthand, because him and we both had a Berserker as well. We got green glyphs for our Berserker, our Lancer, and our Slayer. And in the end, when you had all the Jujubes, all the right stats on your weapon, all the right crystals, and those green glyphs on Slayer, baby, there's no contest when you start procking out those heart stabs one after another. That thing's a 30 freaking second cooldown skill. It's your strongest attack. And you can be popping it off every 8 seconds on average with these cooldown glyphs. You guys don't even know what damage is. I'm not even going to bother explaining it to you. We never told anybody. Why should we? Keep talking crap about Slayer. Keep saying my class is bad, because it makes me look even better when I outdamage all of you. Keep it up. I don't care. But then my absolute favorite thing of all that I brought to that guild and to that server, after they formally invited Cloudbuster to be part of them, was after the alien invasions, everyone would go to do the turn-ins at the same time, and we would wait until after the invasions were done, because we didn't want to interrupt the maestro, because the nodes just appeared and people could clear them in whatever order they wanted, but there was usually someone directing traffic of, hey, this node next, this node next. It made sure that everyone got the most points for the event, and of course there were always guilds that would go around ignoring it, and no one liked them. And if any one of them died, you can believe your ass, no one raised them. This is like Japan, and do what everyone else is doing or you're going to be rejected. That's how it goes, bro. And at the end of it, when everyone was done turning things in and we didn't need to use the global channel for communication and direction anymore, we would use Ventrilo and guild chat to organize a duck face spam. We would tell everyone, type out /global space 030 and be ready to hit enter when we give the signal. For reference, at this point, our guild had 42 members in it. And most people would just do a single duck face, but some people would do entire walls of duck faces. And also slogans of bow to the duck, worship the duck god, you peons, you serfs, you peasants. And it would just be this thing that would all happen at once, one time. We didn't like hit up, enter, none of that, just one time per person, where we all quacked as a guild in tandem in global chat. And the rage and the hate and it banded us together, honestly. It was one of the most fun times I have had in an online game with a group of people. I have a lot of good memories from that game, and especially those people, and I guess that's about it, other than the lone vandal, this 65-year-old guy we played with who didn't know how to play the game. He would attack the laser pylons in the dungeon, the things that have 99% damage resistance, the things you're supposed to walk past, but we would never be like, Lone, what are you doing? We don't supposed to fight those things, because we didn't want to make him feel dumb. So we would actually just join in with him and gang pile on the laser pylons, even though it was a waste of time and there was no point in doing it. We didn't want to make Lone feel stupid or anything like that, so we never really called him out on it. We just laughed about it, had fun, And honestly, I think that's one of the important things that people just don't get. I think everyone's so critically obsessed with efficiency for efficiency's sake these days that when you're putting together your endgame group, you need to have people like Lone. You need to have those silly, goofy people that lighten the mood, because endgame stuff is always going to bring about drama. you need those wise people who can lighten the mood and de-escalate things. And that's what Lone was for us. Anyway, thank you for listening to my word barf, as usual. Appreciate you. God bless.